Imagine waking up one day to find someone building a massive structure right on your land, and they refuse to leave. That's exactly what happened to me. The HOA didn't care about boundaries. They didn't care about rules. They didn't care about me, just their pavilion, in the middle of my property, letters, ignored, meetings, mocked, complaints, brushed aside. Every day, my dream property was stolen in plain sight, and I realized, if I didn't fight back, no one would. So I made a bold move, one action that shocked the HOA, protected my land, and ultimately earned me $100,000 in court. Here's how I took back what was mine. I bought that land with a dream, a quiet, private space for my family, a place where kids could run freely, mornings could start with the sun sparkling on the water, and evenings could be spent under the stars. I had worked hard for years to save for it, and I imagined it as ours, untouchable, peaceful, mine, but one morning I drove by and froze. A massive pavilion had appeared, right in the middle of my property. Not a tree, not a fence, not a corner marker was respected. They claimed it was for community use, but I knew the truth. They didn't care about rules, boundaries, or my rights. They wanted it and they weren't going to ask. They were going to take. I tried to stay calm. I wrote letters, sent emails, made formal complaints. I documented everything meticulously, showing exactly where my property began and ended, even referencing old maps and official deeds. I thought reason would win. I thought they'd understand, but the HOA ignored it. They laughed at the paperwork. Lawyers dismissed my claims. Emails went unanswered. Meetings were full of empty promises and arrogant smirks. Every day that pavilion stood, it was like a weight on my chest, a glaring reminder that my property, my hard work, my dream was being trampled in front of me. Neighbors noticed. Some whispered that I should just walk away. Others shook their heads, saying HOA power was too strong. But I couldn't. I refused to let them turn my dream into their playground. Every time I drove past that pavilion, my anger grew, but so did my resolve. I knew I had to act, not with threats, not with empty words, but with a bold move that would finally put an end to this. This wasn't just about a pavilion. It was about respect, rights, and standing up for what's yours. I had invested years of my life into this land, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even the HOA, walk all over it. That's when I realized it was time to take control, and I wasn't going to do it halfway. The pavilion didn't come down on its own. The HOA ignored every complaint, every warning, every ounce of reason I tried to throw at them. Weeks turned into months, and still it stood. A massive, intrusive structure mocking me every time I looked at it. I spent nights pacing, weighing my options. Lawyers said I could take them to court, but that would take years. Meetings were a joke. They never took me seriously. Letters were ignored. I realized something. Waiting for justice would cost me more than money. It would cost my sanity, my family's peace, and my sense of control over my own life. And that's when I made a decision, one that would shock the HOA, silence the doubters, and reclaim what was rightfully mine. I rented a bulldozer, not in anger, not in haste, but in careful, calculated determination. I planned every step, documented everything, and made sure I followed the law because I wasn't just taking down a structure, I was creating proof. Every action had to be undeniable. The morning I drove the bulldozer onto my land, a crowd had gathered. Some neighbors whispered, some watched in awe, some shook their heads, and there, looming ahead, was the pavilion, unyielding, arrogant, claiming what wasn't theirs. I started carefully, moving debris, checking boundaries, documenting each inch. The HOA officials arrived, furious, yelling, waving papers, threats spilling from their mouths. They thought they could intimidate me with authority, but I stood my ground, calm, steady, deliberate. Every swing of the bulldozer was a statement. This is mine, this is my property. Hours passed. Dust filled the air, sweat ran down my face. My family watched from a safe distance, tense but hopeful. And bit by bit, the pavilion began to crumble under the weight of truth and persistence. Every beam that fell was a reminder that no one can take what you've worked for if you refuse to back down. The HOA threatened lawsuits. They shouted. They gestured wildly, trying to make me hesitate. But hesitation had cost me enough already. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I kept every record, every photograph, every angle documented. By the time the last beam fell, it was clear who owned the land and who had no right to be there. Neighbors clapped, some silently, some audibly. Some shook their heads, muttering, "I can't believe he did it." I felt a mix of adrenaline and relief, knowing that this bold action wasn't reckless, it was strategic. Every step was documented, every decision had been carefully thought out. I hadn't just bulldozed a pavilion, I had created undeniable evidence that would eventually earn me justice. And as I watched the rubble settle, I knew one thing: this fight wasn't over yet. The court would decide, but for the first time in months, I felt in control. For the first time in months, the pavilion was no longer a looming insult to my property. It was gone. And soon the law would see what I already knew: my land, my rules, my victory. The court date arrived, and I felt a mixture of anticipation, nerves, and quiet confidence. I had done my homework. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence was organized and ready. This was not just about money, it was about justice, principle, and protecting what was mine. Courtroom was tense. The HOA lawyers tried to twist the story, claiming community access, claiming I had overreacted, even claiming that the pavilion belonged to them. But I had the truth. I had boundaries, maps, legal documents, emails, photos of every step, and of course, the demolition. Carefully documented to show how it had been built on my property illegally. When I spoke, I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I presented the facts calmly and clearly. I explained the timeline, showed the ignored letters, the threats, the blatant refusal to follow rules. And then I played the footage, the pavilion standing defiantly in the middle of my property, followed by the careful removal with the bulldozer, proving I had acted responsibly and within my rights. The judge leaned forward, scanning every page, every photograph, every piece of video. I could feel the tension in the room, the HOA officials shifting uncomfortably in their seats. They had thought power and intimidation could win. They had underestimated one thing: someone who knows their rights and refuses to back down. After what felt like hours, the judge made the ruling: my property, my rights, fully recognized, and on top of that, a $100,000 award for the legal costs, damages, and the stress imposed on me and my family. The courtroom erupted in whispers, some shocked, some relieved. I felt a rush of vindication, relief, and pride all at once. Driving home that day, I looked at my land. The pavilion long gone, my property intact, my family smiling beside me, and realized something profound. This victory wasn't just about money or even the pavilion. It was about standing up for what is yours, refusing to be intimidated, and taking bold, decisive action when the situation demands it. Neighbors who had doubted me came by to congratulate me. Some shook their heads in disbelief, saying I wouldn't have had the guts to do that. But I knew this was more than courage. It was persistence, preparation, and a refusal to let anyone trample over years of hard work and dreams. That night, as the sun set over the property, I felt a deep sense of peace. The fight was over. My land, my rules, my family's sanctuary, untouched, protected, and respected. The HOA learned a lesson that day, and more importantly, I learned something vital. Sometimes justice requires boldness, but it always rewards those who refuse to give up. And as I looked at the empty space where the pavilion once stood, I smiled. Not just because I had won, but because I had proven that when you fight for what is yours, no obstacle, even a powerful HOA, can stand in your way. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more videos. Thank you. This video is a dramatized, AI-generated story created for entertainment purposes only. Names, characters, and situations are fictional and do not represent any real individuals or events. This content fully complies with YouTube's community guidelines and policies.